Hi, folks. Thank you again so much for joining us. My name is Cassandra Rendon Morales. I use she, her, ella pronouns, and I'm the Reproductive Rights Campaign Coordinator. I'm so sorry that says tonight. That should say today. I hope you're having a good lunch. And now I'm going to hand it off to Lizzie.
Hi, everyone. As Delana almost got right the first time around, my name is Lizzie Hinckley. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Reproductive Rights Policy Council.
Awesome. So today's webinar is going to be focused on the ballot initiative, Abortion Ban. So today you will walk away with more information on the Abortion Ban Ballot Initiative campaign. You'll walk away with a deeper understanding of how this is an attack on reproductive freedom and ways to stay engaged. I do want to give a shout out to all of our Repro Rights Repro Rights Coalition members who are joining us today. We work in a coalition. The name of the coalition is called the Colorado Reproductive Health Rights and Justice Coalition. You will receive a website link to our website at the end, but big shout out to them. We do this work collaboratively and we couldn't do it any other way. So we are going to start with defining what abortion later in pregnancy is. So really, abortion later in pregnancy, also known as later abortion, is a political concept. It's not a medical concept. It's a political concept created by anti-abortion politicians and activists seeking to ban all abortion. Later abortion typically describes abortion during the second or third trimester. So although 1% of abortions are typically considered abortion later in pregnancies, after the 21st week's gestation period. So although this number is small, it doesn't mean that these procedures are uncommon. Again, this is why it's so important for folks to be able to decide on this procedure with their healthcare provider. So I just want to name that. Although this is a small number of folks seeking this procedure, it's not uncommon for folks to access this procedure. Later abortion bans impose one-size-fits-all restrictions that do not account for the unique circumstances of every pregnancy. They're actually really arbitrary. They're medically unnecessary and unconstitutional under Roe v. Wade. You'll learn more about how it's unconstitutional for all of you nerdy constitutional folks out there. Colorado does not restrict abortion, later abortion pregnancy. We're a safe haven for later abortion care. Also, I do want to flag that reporters, or you might see in the media, they use the term abortion. Again, this is a made-up anti-abortion term, and we should just steer away from using that language altogether. So why is abortion later in pregnancy an essential option for pregnant people? Because everyone should have the freedom to make personal decisions about their pregnancy based on medical evidence and their own beliefs, right? I chuckled because this is fundamental. Like, we should all be able to make decisions about our bodies, make decisions for ourselves and our families. Every pregnancy is unique. So one-size-fits-all bans drafted by anti-abortion activists and politicians don't put the health of pregnant individuals first. Later abortion often involves a complication that seriously threatens the life or health of a pregnant person, a fetus that cannot survive, or both. And existing abortion restrictions create financial and logistical barriers that delay access to care early in pregnancy. Some of these restrictions are around Title X, gag rule, Hyde Amendment, waiting periods, and trap laws. Lizzie will walk you through more examples of how these restrictions affect folks.
Thanks, Cass.
So I'm going to hand it off.
Thank you, Cass. Sorry, I jumped the gun there. So now we're going to share with you three stories of folks who access later abortion care in Colorado to illustrate why we need this care and why it's critical that we oppose and defeat any efforts to enact a later abortion ban in Colorado. So the first two stories are of Erica Christensen and her husband, who are from New York, and Christina and Roy Taylor of Colorado. Both families were in a similar situation. They had very much wanted pregnancies. Erica and her husband were excited to welcome their first child, and the Taylors were thrilled to add a third child to their family. However, in their second and third trimesters, respectively, the Taylors and Christensens got heartbreaking diagnosis from their doctor. They were told that their developing baby was not compatible with life, that should they decide to continue the pregnancy and give birth, their baby would not survive and would likely experience pain and trauma in the process. Both the Taylors and the Christensens took a beat to think about their options, talk it over with loved ones and with their doctors, and both families decided that the right choice for them was later abortion. Here's where their stories diverge because of where they lived. Erica Christensen lives in New York with her husband. New York has a later abortion ban. So because Erica was past the point where she was able to legally have an abortion in her home state, she was forced to scramble to come up with money, which was approximately $10,000, to travel to Colorado, to stay in a hotel, and to pay for later abortion care, which for her was uninsured under her insurance plan. The Taylors, however, lived in Colorado, where as of now, we do not have a later abortion ban. So within a week of diagnosis, they were able to speak with their doctors, speak with their loved ones, and come to the decision that they were going to access later abortion care and have a later abortion in Colorado, in their community, in the comfort of the state that they lived. And although both families testified that it was such a heart-wrenching, life-altering experience to have these diagnoses, the Taylors credit the fact that they were able to access later abortion care in their home state of Colorado as the one small blessing in their ordeal. Next slide, please, Cass. This third story is the story of a woman named M who lives here in Colorado. This is meant to illustrate that not only is every pregnancy unique, but every pregnant person's circumstances are unique. And that's why it's important to oppose one-size-fits-all laws that don't take into account the individual circumstances of every pregnant person. So like I said, M lives here in Colorado. Her experience was quite different from the Taylors and the Christensens. M is homeless. She was the victim of a rape while she was living outside, and as a result of that, became pregnant. She knew immediately that she wanted an abortion, and she was able to arrange for an appointment at an abortion clinic during her first trimester. However, because of her individual circumstances, the night before she was supposed to be able to have her abortion appointment, she was arrested. She was arrested while she was staying in a motel because oftentimes law enforcement go to motels where they know homeless folks stay on vouchers, and they run people's names through their system to see if there are any outstanding warrants. So they target homeless people in these motels. M fell victim to one such targeted search by law enforcement. She was arrested on an outstanding warrant and was taken to jail. This was the morning before she was supposed to access abortion care. Once she arrived in jail, she told her jailers she was pregnant. She told them that she had arranged to have an abortion that following day, and she asked to be transported to her appointment. She was told that was not possible because her clinic was not a secured location. She then asked if she could receive the care within the jail's medical facility, to which she was also told no. When she was finally able to speak with an OBGYN while she was in jail, she asked for advice on how she could access abortion. And she was told by this treating physician that because of the Title X gag rule, he was unable to discuss all options with her, including abortion. So she was left isolated, without information, and without access to abortion care. Eventually, she was released from jail. But as a result of her time in jail, she had developed other medical complications unrelated to her pregnancy that delayed her from accessing abortion care even more. So by the time she was able to actually access care, she was well into her second trimester. And she was able to access care, but had there been a later abortion ban in Colorado, she would have been one of the folks, including the Taylors and the Christensens, who would not have been able to have a later abortion. M is one of the 58% of abortion patients who say they would have had an abortion earlier in their pregnancy had they been able to access it. But they face financial, logistical, information, and legal barriers like M faced. Again, this is an illustration, M's story is an illustration of the fact that not only are pregnancies unique, but every person's circumstances are unique. These are personal decisions that should be made with the support of one's loved ones and medical provider, not with a one-size-fits-all law that's put in place by politicians or activists. Next slide, please. So now I'll talk a little bit about a proposed abortion ban ballot initiative that we at the ACLU, as well as our partners in the Reproductive Rights, Health, and Justice Coalition, are combating at the moment. Next slide, please. So the ballot initiative that we're seeing right now is called Initiative 120. If enacted, it would ban abortion after 22 weeks gestation in Colorado. It takes away individual decision-making and puts in place a one-size-fits-all law. It's led by a campaign called Due Date Too Late. This is not a campaign of this is not a grassroots-led campaign. It's led by anti-abortion activists and politicians. It's not supported by medical providers. This campaign has been brought in response to the fact that anti-abortion groups have failed repeatedly to pass a personhood abortion ban in Colorado. They've tried and failed 4 times in the last decade or so. And so they've changed course, and they see a later abortion ban as a tactic and a necessary step in order for them to work towards their ultimate goal of banning all abortion in Colorado. We saw just in the last 2 years that anti-abortion politicians in our state legislature have tried to ban later abortion. The first was in 2018, and we saw one as recently as this year in February in 2020. The one in 2020 is identical to this ballot initiative. It was a 22-week ban, and it was championed by Representative Dave Williams, who is a self-avowed anti-abortion politician. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is the impact of Initiative 120? So as I mentioned, it bans abortion after 22 weeks gestation. It has no exception for the health of the pregnant person when their health is in danger, or when they are a survivor of rape or incest. There also is no exception for when a fetus will not survive outside of the womb. So under this ballot initiative, the Christensens and the Taylors would not be able to access abortion care in Colorado because there is no exception for fetal survival. And the same with M, even though she was a victim of rape, she would not be able to access later abortion here as well under this new initiative. Doctors, should this be enacted, doctors would face criminal charges and have their medical license suspended for 3 years at a minimum. This ballot initiative is not based in medical fact, it is political, and it is intended to ban all abortion in Colorado. It hurts real people like the Christiansons and the Taylors and M, and it takes away the freedom of personal decision-making about one's medical care. It destroys Colorado as a safe haven for later abortion. As Cass had mentioned a little earlier, we are a safe haven because we are one of only a handful of states in the country that does not ban later abortion. In fact, two out of three later abortion patients who have later abortions in Colorado come from outside Colorado, like the Christiansons. Next slide, please. Okay, so this abortion ban ballot initiative is unconstitutional under Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade and the cases that have followed it out of the Supreme Court hold that before fetal viability, which is defined as developing fetus's ability to survive outside of the womb with or without medical intervention. So before that point of fetal viability, a state cannot ban abortion under any circumstance, period. The decision is with the pregnant person. After the point of fetal viability, any restriction on abortion must have an exception for the pregnant person's life and health. And it must be up to their treating physician to determine whether their health or life is in jeopardy. That's not something slate around. As I talked about a little while ago, Initiative 120 does not have a health exception at all. If a pregnant person is experiencing physical or psychological health because of their pregnancy, they still cannot have an abortion under this initiative. It also limits the exception for life under Initiative 120 is limited to when a pregnant person's life is in immediate danger due to a physical illness or injury. It does not include psychological illness. Further, there's no exception for rape, incest, or when the fetus will not survive outside or after birth. Next slide, please. All right, so where are we in the process for Initiative 120? The proponents of this initiative submitted signatures back in March to the Secretary of State. In order to get on the ballot for November 2020, they needed to submit 124,632 valid signatures. The Secretary of State examined their signatures back in March and determined that they were approximately 10,000 short. So statute allows them a 15-day cure period during which they're able to collect additional signatures to try and make up that shortfall. This cure period was delayed several times due to the COVID pandemic, but it began last week on May 15th, and it is a 15-day period, so it goes through May 29th. We saw coverage over the weekend and from our partners that Due Date Too Late is out in full force in churches, outside of grocery stores, and in shopping centers collecting signatures. They are not wearing gloves, they are not socially distancing, they are not using hand sanitizer, but they are collecting signatures, and they have until the 29th to do so. They will then submit their signatures to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State will have a 10-day period to review them and determine whether they have reached that roughly $10,000 number of valid signatures that they need to make it on the ballot. So we anticipate we'll know sometime probably in July, we'll know definitively as to whether Initiative 120 will be on the ballot in November. Next slide, please. All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Cass now, who's gonna tell you how you can take action.
Yes, so now I'm gonna walk you through a few steps to take action. Sweet. So we're asking folks who are joining us today to join our No Bans campaign. This is super, super easy. It'll take you like 2 minutes to do. All you have to do is text no bans to 33777. This way you'll join us on this list where I know and Lizzie know that you're interested in staying updated on the news for this campaign. You're interested in learning with us. So that means like joining us for future webinars, joining us for ways to volunteer, whether it's like a phone bank, maybe hopefully we could do some canvassing later on this summer. You know, so it's super, super easy. All you have to do is text no bans to 33777. 2 minutes, I promise you. Yes, join us. And I will also be sending out this presentation through a Dropbox as well as a recording for this webinar. So you have access to that anytime and you can share it with your community and fellow friends and activists. I also want to make a plug for a recent editorial piece that went out through the Sentinel, and it's super, super short. We're asking folks to read it and to share it, whether that's like on Twitter, Facebook. All you really have to do is just share it with your community. It's a really easy way to understand why this initiative is harmful. And if you want, you can even tweet at us and we'll heart it, maybe reshare it. So we're asking folks to do that today. We're also asking folks to join us on other webinars that we are hosting. We have one coming up this Thursday, and that's a virtual town hall with the Secretary of State. And then we have one the following week on the Equality Act. That is a SCOTUS case that is going to have a decision made very, very soon. So you're more than welcome to join us for those two webinars. And again, just read that piece, share it out, super short. We want to make sure that we give you ways of being a voice in this and all of our issues, so you can advocate from home. We also have a list of resources that you can access. You know, Lizzie shared out those two stories earlier today in this webinar. And the key to, you know, also winning this campaign is not just with you all, but sharing it out with your communities and creating that empathy for abortion access. We need to just talk about it. Abortion care is healthcare. So some of these articles touch on the stories that Lizzie mentioned. There's also some information on here via Guttmacher. It's all information, evidence-based information on leader abortion care. You're more than welcome to click on those and share them out. We also have our Advocacy from Home webpage on there with all of the past webinars that we have put on different issues. They're pre-recorded, so you can always click through there if you have some time. And then at the bottom, we have our reproductive health care services. You have the Women's Freedom Fund, known now as the Cobalt Freedom Fund, Planned Parenthood, and then we have the Reproductive Health Rights and Justice Coalition website there, and that is the website that I mentioned earlier today. These are all the folks that we work around the table with, and I know that some of our partners have also started their own volunteer advocacy for this campaign. I will be sure to mention that and send that when I send you the follow-up email for this webinar. So now we're going to open it up to questions. You will see a little drop box for Q&A. You can send your question over and we will review them and try to answer them as best as we can. If there is a question that we cannot answer today, we can definitely follow up with you. That's not an issue.
All right. Thank you so much for all this great information. And we do have someone telling us the bit.ly link doesn't work. I'm not sure which one they're referring to, but we will also send out the direct links. That,
yes, I can review them and I can make sure that they work. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you do have, it says for read and share. So if you do have questions, go ahead and type them into the Q&A box. And thank you to the person who pointed that out. We will make sure to get all the correct links out to everybody. Oh, to the Sentinel article is what they're saying. Okay, so we'll take care of it. Thank you. And so far, no questions. So we have gotten a couple of people who signed up for our no bans text. So that is great. We appreciate that, and we'll keep you informed. So I know this is kind of the second time we've done this, so maybe everybody got their questions answered the first time. I don't even think I have questions today, which is unusual. We'll give it a second here. I want to just kind of echo what Cass said about thanking our partners for all the work they've done and that we've done together. This coalition is amazing, and the work it gets done, and how, you know, how effective they've been. So thank you to all our partners who are on here today, listening in. And I think, you know, they're going to have many actions that we can take, and maybe other educational webinars looking at things from a different point of view than we do. And still no questions. So Cass, Lizzie, you have any clue? Oh, we got one, yay. No. So for clarity, do you recommend that people avoid using the term later abortion? That is a great question.
So I don't think we recommend not using it. We tend to use later abortion or abortion later in pregnancy. The latter is a little wordy, so we move to later abortion for shorthand. But no, I think that's a completely acceptable way to refer to this type of abortion.
So what you're trying to avoid, though, if I have this correct, is late-term abortion, correct? Okay.
That's correct. Thank you, Delana. Yeah, late-term abortion, which Cass talked about briefly, is a political term that became popular back in the early 2000s when anti-abortion politicians were trying to enact later abortion bans. And so the anti-abortion contingent was referring to it as late-term abortion, and media just kind of went with it because there wasn't an alternative that folks in our circle were offering. And so, but we're suggesting that you move away from using that.
Okay, great. The next question is, and I don't know, you guys can take it or I'll take it. If Initiative 120 does make it on the ballot this fall, what is the likelihood that it would pass?
It's hard to say. We don't want it to get on the ballot because we don't want to have to figure this out. But so unlike the personhood amendments that were run in the 2000s and 2010s, this Initiative 120 has the greater chance of getting either moderate or independent or even left-leaning voters to support it if they're not fully educated on what the initiative actually does. The other side has cynically but creatively spun later abortion bans as a happy compromise between personhood and reproductive freedom. And of course, there is no compromise when it comes to reproductive freedom. If we have laws in place that take away individual decision-making and that implement one-size-fits-all bans on people and prevents them from having the freedom to make their own decisions, then that's not a compromise. And as I mentioned earlier, this Initiative 120 is unconstitutional on its face under Roe v. Wade and subsequent Supreme Court precedent. So we don't see it as a compromise, but others might.
Yeah, I think some people see it as reasonable in some way, you know, but it's not. It's bad. So we'll wait. what anti-choice organizations have backed this effort? In other words, how well supported is it at this time? So how well supported are due date too late? Because I know you mentioned they're not grassroots.
No, the state GOP party is lifting this up as their priority ballot initiative. They are sending emails out to their membership, to their base, encouraging people to vote in favor of this ballot initiative. So as we know, the state GOP party is not a grassroots organization. The activists who are behind Due Date Too Late are part of one of the statewide anti-abortion organizations that comes to the Capitol every year and testifies in support of personhood bills that bans abortion at conception. So there's no questioning where their motives lie. These are people who want to ban abortion in Colorado outright, and this is a step that they see towards achieving that.
And would this initiative disproportionately affect people of color?
So earlier we talked about arbitrary barriers and we talked about financial and logistical barriers. So yes, already financial and logistical barriers affect people of color, Black women, Black trans folks, because that's the world that we live in. So imagine having to be a person in that identity and having to access already reproductive health care services that are not abortion. So it just puts another barrier for these folks. And that's why reproductive justice exists, to address some of these awful barriers. So yes, it would.
Okay, great, thank you. And our last question is not a question, just someone saying, great job, Cass and Lizzie, thank you. So we thank you for joining us today. And we'll give it a second to see if there's any more questions, but if not, again, on Thursday afternoon, we're gonna have the Secretary of State webinar. You can sign up at People Power if if we don't have the links up right now. You can sign up there, just put in your zip code and it'll show you everything that's going on. It's peoplepower.org. And then we'll send the link out prior, just like we did with this one. And then next Tuesday, a week from today, we will be talking about the Equality Act and what it means for Colorado and how you can get involved in making it a reality. And that is it for us today. Do you ladies have anything?
Just thank you all so much, and please decline to sign Initiative 120.
Decline to sign.
And tell your friends, obviously.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and we will see you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.